Spit bars, I stand behind mine. Yeah. Sentences I serve, maximize guidelines. My lawyer can't give me his advice when these beasts that I murder carry mandatory minimums of life. Yikes. In case you didn't get the point, we spit bars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. I'm your man AJ Throwback. Great to be here with you on another awesome Wednesday where we are breaking down a brand new track from my debut EP, The Late Bloomer, called Leaving Alice. This is track number 2 on the EP. But before we get any further, if this is your first time watching any of my content, The Maximum Sentence, or anything that I have on this channel, please make sure that you like, comment, share, and of course subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification so that whenever I go live, post a new video, premiere a new video, you'll be among the first to know. Now, we got that out of the way. Of course, we always got to set it off by giving love to those who give love to this platform. So let's go ahead and get into some of these comments right now. Shout out to my brother Mike Mountain, who says, me and you are definitely the same tribe, bro. And he also says, you are right, age does not matter. It's all God's divine timing. And what's awesome about his comment is that so many things came up in this past week, specifically the last couple of days, about timing and the importance of it. So I definitely appreciate both of those comments. Shout out to my Fresh Tribe sis, Prowess The Testament, who also had 2 comments. She said, amazing episode and love the whole series. And then she also says, that means so much. This was in response to me saying how she was such a huge influence and encouragement to me, making sure that I put any music out altogether. We had lots of conversations. So she says, that means so much. Continue to amplify your gift, brother. Your transparency is inspiring. I definitely appreciate you for that. And that's what it's all about. This whole project is about transparency. Actually, the next 2 projects are all about transparency. So thank you for that. Then we have a comment from my sis Jukebox, who says, such a beautiful message about time and timing. Thank you so much for this video. It touched me to hear this. Thank you for the message, King AJ. And you know, once again, the whole thing about time and time is very important because we get so hung up on those things when it comes down to it in the divine, God doesn't care about those things. Only we care so much about them. So thank you so much for that. Another awesome comment from my brother T. Witts, who says, very dope insight. Personally, I feel there's nothing wrong with being a listener as long as what you are listening to is worth listening to. There's so many people who are listeners simply because they have nothing worth being listened to going on. I believe being a listener for so long helped you to develop into the artist that you are today, with so much insight not only on others but retrospectively on yourself. So many people are quick to talk about others but have no idea what's going on with self. That's what I admire about you. Just my 2 cents, LOL. Just spot on. So spot on. So thank you so much for that. And then another awesome comment. The last comment comes from my brother Marcello Bradley of What's Up With You. Also, if you have not seen my episode, my awesome interview with him, an awesome conversation, please make sure that you check that out. And this is actually in response to the love theory. So he says, oh man, this one here is heavy. Where to start? It's amazing how much our parents' relationship affects our relationships. It's not until we realize that our parents aren't perfect that we come to accept that maybe they made some mistakes along the way. My parents had a bad run in the mid-'80s, but also stuck it out. I salute you for being willing to unpack the childhood trauma to the relationships to marriage. I think you're not unlike a lot of us men who are trying our best to figure it all out. I never had a great birds and bees talk either, so I feel you, my man. All I remember was my dad saying, don't bring no babies in this house. And at 20, I had my firstborn, so there's that. And another great one, bro. I got to get to the next one. Playing catch up, LOL. So I definitely appreciate that comment. I also appreciate your transparency as well with your own situation, you know, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I do this series, is to connect with people on that level. So people, you know, have somebody who feels like, yo, somebody understands me. Somebody is making my type of music where they're not talking about the same things over and over and over again. You know, I try to talk about it in a way that people feel like, you know what, I connect with that, I relate to that. So I definitely appreciate comments like those, and I appreciate all of the comments from everybody who took the time out of their day to, you know, just show some love. And I definitely appreciate everybody who continues to support this album, this EP. I definitely appreciate everybody who continues to support this EP, all of the songs from the EP. If you don't have it yet, please make sure that you go to my website, bammllc.net/music, or you can go to my Bandcamp page if you want the 4 bonus tracks, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. So let's go ahead and get into track number 2, Leaving Alice. So the part that I want to focus on in the first verse, because there's so many parts I could focus on, but the part in the first verse that opens it up, where I say, once again we packing up, ain't this like the 5th move, living life out of Samsonites, I'm only 6, dude, Oxon Hill, y'all ain't get your proper fills the first time, oh I get it, try to charm us with a 3rd time. Those lines, those opening lines are so important because it just felt like for the first 5-6 years of my life, we just were not in one place. We lived in Oxon Hill, right across from Greater Southeast Community Hospital, which is now United Medical Center. I forget what the name of those apartments are, but they right across the street. That's where we were when I was first born. Then we lived in Colonial Village, which is not too far from there, maybe like, I say 5 minutes from there, but still in Oxon Hill. Then we lived in Massachusetts for like a year because my dad was in the he was in the Army for 4 years. He was stationed in Massachusetts for like a year. Then when we moved back to DC, we lived with my aunt and my uncle on Savannah Place Southeast. And I mentioned living with them before, but this was after my mom and my dad separated. But this particular point, this is right around the time my brother was born. We were staying Savannah Place Southeast with them. This was like around 1983, 1984. Then what ended up happening was crazy because I was going to Winston Elementary School in Southeast right around the time that we were living with my aunt and uncle. But then we ended up moving back uptown. So my mom would trek all the way, because I want to say she was working at, if I'm not mistaken, I think she was working at Moton Elementary in Southeast. So I think she was working at Moton, working there. I went to Winston, and because, you know, she had already enrolled me there, so I guess she decided to just keep me there. So I went to Winston for 2 years. Then when we moved to Oxon Hill Village, which was 1985, like I said, we moved there. And, you know, I had gotten used to all of this moving. It was like, okay, like, when are we finally going to get settled? When are we finally going to be in one place? And then that's right around the time we moved to Oxon Hill. That's when I started going to Lecky Elementary School, and that's where I finished elementary school, was at Lecky, and Lecky being in Southwest DC. So we finally get to Oxon Hill, and I don't know what it was about Oxon Hill. Oxon Hill just felt different. Oxon Hill Village felt different. And the title, anybody who knows Oxon Hill Village, the title comes from the avenue that we lived on. Our address was 2117 Alice Avenue, apartment 102. Let me tell you, when it comes to my memory is like a steel trap when it came to living at Oxon Hill, because I remember the exact address. I remember what our old phone number, it was 301-630-0680. Do not ask me how I remember that. I remember numbers that I feel like I should not remember, like FBI, CIA type stuff, you know what I mean? But I remember the number. I remember like what the apartment looked like everything. When I say, because a lot of the other places, now granted, you know, I remember, of course, my aunt and my uncle's house, because I lived there twice. Of course, I remember my grandmother, my granddad's house, uptown. I think I left that out. We lived uptown, Sheridan Street, Northwest, with my granddad and my grandmother. So we lived there, but like, of course I remember those houses because, you know, my grandma's house, you know, I go over her house from time to time. But a lot of the other places, I do not really remember. I don't really remember Colonial Village as vividly as a lot of the other places. I feel like we lived somewhere else too in Southeast at another time off of 4th Street or on 4th Street. I think we lived over there. Don't get me the line, but I feel like, because I want to say this might have been the place. Let me tell y'all, my dad, God rest his soul, my dad had the ugliest wallpaper. It was like the weirdest thing. It was like this Sphinx eating a stack of pancakes, and it was like the ugliest wallpaper ever. I'm like, yo, to this day, I think about that wallpaper. Even as a kid, I was like, what is this? This is the oddest ugliest thing ever. Like, why do we have it all over the wall? You know what I mean? It's like crazy. But I think this is when we were living on 4th Street in Southeast. But anyway, this point of my life, this was the place that we had stayed at the longest, because most places we didn't stay longer than a year. I mean, I just named like what, 5, 6 places? And none of them places we lived longer than a year. Maybe Sheridan Street. I think Sheridan Street we probably stayed for about 2 years. But anyway, but Oxon Hill was just different. That's really just the point of it all. Like, it just felt different, because then you get to the lines where I say, but Shangri-La waited by the water tower. Cycle power tripping on his course for hours. Running to the truck, spending chore allowance. Give me all your lemon heads, I'm about to make it quarter shower. When I tell you Oxon Hill was like heaven to me, man, like I was just having a story with my mom, and it's funny because my nephew, apparently my brother has told my nephew the infamous story. So we had these differentiations of playgrounds. So you had the little playground, which was the closest playground to our apartment building. Then you had the big playground, aka the yellow playground, which was across the street. Then you had the brown playground, which was closer to the swimming pool. So we didn't really go to the brown playground that often unless we were going to the swimming pool. But it was basically between the little playground and the big playground / the yellow playground. The reason we called it the yellow playground was because there was a yellow sliding board, and I want to say like other parts of the playground equipment were yellow. So that was our differentiation. And so we're at the little playground, and my brother, he goes in the house. Mind you, what's crazy is that, I don't want to make an indictment on my parents' parenting skills or, their methods. But I kind of feel like when I look back in retrospect, there's no way a 3-year-old should have been running from the playground to the back to the apartment building and then back to the playground by himself. Like, he went by himself, came back to me without any kind of supervision. He's only 3 at the time, mind you. And it's like, I'm 7. So it's like, I think about some of these things, it's kind of funny now. But he goes in an apartment, comes back, tells me, Joe, guess what? Daddy said we could go to the big playground. And I was like, for real? Now, I'm 7 years old. I'm not thinking don't trust a 3-year-old because, he's a 3-year-old and he just might possibly lie just so he could get his way. So I'm like, bet. So we cross the street. Of course, we look both ways before we cross the street. I was trained in that from the age of like 3. You know what I mean? Which is probably one of the reasons why my dad and my mom trusted me and my brother enough to be able to do that, because we knew to look both ways before we crossed the street. But anyway, so we go over to the big playground. We having a ball. Next thing you know, my mom comes out. She comes across the street and is like, y'all know y'all in trouble, right? And I'm looking at her like, why? And she's like, who told y'all could go to the big playground? I was like, well, Mike said we go to the big playground. She's like, now you the older brother, you shouldn't be listening to a 3-year-old. I was like, I just looked at my brother like, bruh, really? You know what I mean? And it's like, but in retrospect, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't have listened to him. You should have verified that information with your parents before you, as the older brother, decide you gonna go across the street because your little brother said so. So we get in the house, we got our butts towed up by my dad. He laid into us, you know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be honest, that's an understandable butt whipping, because it's one of those situations like we could have easily gotten hurt. We could have easily gotten hit by a car or something at that time. But just, that's a representation of the time. We get butt whippings or whatever for doing little knucklehead stuff. But when I tell you we had so much fun, the truck, I gotta talk about the truck. The truck had all the freaking snacks. Whenever you see those graphics about, what's your favorite ice cream truck snack? Bomb Pops and Alexander the Grapes and Lemon Heads and the strawberry eclairs and the chocolate eclairs, like all the snow cones, all the freaking hood ice cream truck snacks. Like, the truck had them. Boston baked beans, can't forget Boston baked beans. Had all them jumps. When I say I used to save up my allowance. Like, I would clean up my room like religiously just so I get my allowance. And half the time, if I wasn't going to buy the little snap-on model cars or buying little, paper to make my little buses and stuff like that, or make my buildings and all of that stuff, or if I wasn't buying some kind of a toy, like spend half our freaking allowance just to get Jones from the truck. Chico sticks, can't forget the Chico sticks. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got everything from the truck. We had the little Transformers power wheels, big wheel joints. We was riding all around on them joints, all around the parking lot. You know what I mean? Before we was really, what's crazy is I knew how to ride a bike, but it's like, okay, they didn't make Transformers bikes. So who wants to ride a bike if you could ride a Transformers big wheel? You know what I mean? Like heavy into Transformers at this time. So you wanted something that made you feel like, okay, I'm in the Transformers and I'm riding on a big wheel. So that's the type of stuff that I just really remember being a kid and just connecting with. Then you get to the second verse where reality starts to hit. Maybe in the midst of ear to ear with Miss Betty on that overcrowded D12. Unbeknown, mom was all alone, tired from the pressure as a steady while my dad was in his deepest hell. Those bars are significant because let me tell you this. So, and when I look back on it, I kind of feel bad in a way. But a part of me feels like maybe I was giving my mom a break. Who knows? But maybe I also was kind of making my mom feel a certain way. But there was this lady, I don't know why I had a fascination with this woman. But we used to get on a D12. So what we did when I was going to Lecky Elementary School, you couldn't board the Maryland buses in DC at the time unless you boarded, I think, at Federal Center Southwest. This is when the D12 used to go all the way to Federal Center Southwest. Now it just goes to Southern Avenue Station. But anyway, so back at that time, you had to walk all the way to Eastover. Basically 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Me, my mom, and my brother, we would trek 10, 15 minutes from Lecky Elementary School to the border of DC and Maryland, right there at Indian Head Highway and Southern Avenue. And we used to board the bus. And I mean, those buses would be crowded every single time. If you got a bus that wasn't that crowded, you were fortunate. Because more often than not, the D12 was packed. And so it was this lady on the bus. I just remember her name being Miss Betty. And I don't know what it was about this one. First and foremost, I just thought she was just like a classy looking lady. You know what I'm saying? I thought she was fine too. I ain't gonna lie. I had a crush on this woman. You know what I mean? But I was just fascinated by it. I don't know why. Because there was so many people on the bus, but like she was always on the same bus typically. Like almost every single time we got on the bus, she was there. And whenever she wasn't, I was disappointed, you know. But I would literally, if I saw her on the bus, I run from my mom, like, all right, mom, see you later. Go talk to Miss Betty. And you know what I mean? And be smiling from ear to ear. But the whole time not realizing that my mom probably wanted to spend more time with me. She probably wanted me to get that excited when it came to her. I don't know. You know, me and my mom never have really talked about that. Maybe we need to, you know, and she may or may, I'm sure she does remember it, but still, I think it's something that she probably needed some love and affection at that time. And not to say that I wasn't loving and affectionate with my mom, because I was a mama's boy for a very long time. You know what I'm saying? I got a little older and I got out of that whole mama's boy thing, but probably for the first 6-7 years of my life, I was a mama's boy. But I was a daddy's boy too, because I loved my dad. I loved hanging around my dad. But the thing is, when people used to watch me, if they went away, I wasn't crying for my dad, I was crying for my mom. You know what I mean? Like, couldn't go like an hour away before they had to come back home because I would not stop crying. But this was when I was like 3-4 years old, maybe as old as 5. But anyway, but I think maybe part of it was me trying to break out of that dependency on my mother. Now, granted, I ended up leaning towards somebody else, but at the same time, it was like I felt like I possibly took the pressure off of her a little bit, not realizing that she had a lot of pressure on her because my dad was working at the time, but my dad wasn't dependable. in terms of holding down a job. At that time, he was working. In fact, he worked for the post office. I want to say between 1984 and either 1987 or 1988, but I think it was 1987 because it was right around the time that he and my mom separated. Right before we ended up moving back to Savannah Place in Southeast. It was right around that time that he stopped working there because his habit got in the way. He couldn't go to work on time half the time. He just wasn't really taking up the mantle of being the man of the household as much as he should have, because, you know, he was dealing with this disease that was hard for him to really get a hold of, and it started affecting the home life. They started getting in arguments more, as I, talked about in the love theory. This was where the start of it was. Really, that's why I sequenced it the way that I did on the album. The reason why Leaving Alice comes before the love theory is because Leaving Alice is like I said, the Shangri-La, the paradise before the storm. Because 1987, that's when everything started hitting the fan, and more arguments started happening, more disagreements, and it just got so bad, and my dad's habits just really started getting so bad that he was just alienating family, he was alienating friends, just so many bad things just started happening, and my mom had to be the one to shoulder a lot of that burden, unfortunately, and she shouldn't have had to. My dad was the man of the house. So third verse, let me tell you, I can tell you where I wrote this song at. So I was at the Starbucks on Ellsworth Drive, downtown Silver Spring, and I remember the moment writing this lyric, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that might be one of the illest things I've ever said. So when I said, but the problem being frozen in nostalgia, now's in low regard, the old is God, don't know it's nostalgia. First and foremost, the wordplay of nostalgia and don't know it's nostalgia, because so many of us get so stuck in a particular time and they don't know how to get out of it. I would literally walk around, like when we lived in Ridgecrest Village between 2006 and 2014. When my wife and I, when we got married, I started doing this thing where I would walk from where we lived, Ridgecrest Court Southeast. I would walk from there, walk up Southern Avenue, walk up, well, down, up, whatever you want to call it, Willow Road. I would walk all the way from Willow Road to St. Barnabas Road, take St. Barnabas to right around like Iverson Mall and all that, go down Branch Avenue, go through Temple Hills, like all of that, where right around the Naylor Road subway station. I would go around there, then walk through that little neighborhood where Oxen Run and all of that is, and then come back up there by, I think is it Spirit of Faith? I always forget the name of that church. That's over there, not too far away from Southern Avenue, but it's on the Maryland side. But anyway, then I would come back up to Ridgecrest and all that. I would take this path because I would always want to remember, or always want to be connected to all of these different times where we just rode in a car. Or like I think about the other day when we were riding past, I think it's North Barnaby Pool on Willow Road. And I told my son, I'm like, yeah, we used to go to the swimming pool there all the time. When I say we used to go to the swimming pool all the time, if it wasn't when I was at Shugart summer camp, this was in 1986 when I was 6 years old, we used to go to the swimming pool every Friday. Every Friday, I look forward to going to that swimming pool. These walks would be me reconnecting with this time. I would spend hours and hours watching YouTube videos from that particular period, watching old commercials, watching old TV shows, trying to piece together the parts of my memory that I'm thinking that I lost somehow. And the problem with being that stuck in nostalgia is that sometimes you don't know how to live in the present. it's hard for you to live in the present because you're so stuck in the past, because you're so stuck in this one particular point of time that you think is so great. But there was a lot of stuff bubbling that you at 7 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old, had no idea the gravity of how serious these things were, because you were so stuck in this world of playing with your Voltrons, playing with your Legos, playing with your Transformers, building these buses out of paper, playing with your little brother, listening to Cameo on the radio, listening to, Albie D back in the day when like PGC first really got started. You know what I'm saying? Being enamored with Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson was all over the TV screen. Watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy faithfully every night, 7:30. All of these things that I remember, I'm so focused on these things that I'm not paying attention to the fact that my mom and my dad's marriage is crumbling. So that's why I said a lot of the things that I said, because I'm so focused on these 2 years. It's only 2 years that we were there. A little over 2 years. These 2 years don't define my life at the end of the day. They're a part of the story, but they're not the sum and the substance of the story. I spent more time at Holly Terrace. I spent way more time basically having a residence on Elmira Street in Southwest. But because I was so caught up on those 2 years that it was hard for me to appreciate anything that happened after that, or anything that happened before it, because there were great times that happened before it. The times we lived, that I lived with my grandmother and my granddad in Northwest. I mean, I was with my cousins, my cousins that were closer to my age. It was cookouts galore. It was like all of these great things. But Oxon Hill just had my mind so locked and loaded or focused on that time that I couldn't see beyond that time. And I think a lot of times with people, the problem is that people get so bent on whatever period of time they connect with the most that they don't accept anything outside of any other time. I think that's why I get annoyed, if I'm being frank, with people who talk, these hip hop conversations, and the only time they can focus on is the golden era of hip hop. When it's like, but there was so many different pockets of these other eras that were great. There's so much other music that's happened since then that's been great, that people don't want to accept anything that's new because they so focused on that time. When if you really think about it, I mean, if we want to have a hip hop conversation real quick, people celebrate the 90s so much. I'm like, but there was a lot of wrong with a lot of music in the 90s. What's funny, I was just watching the Unsung Decades. They had a decade special about the 90s. And what's crazy is they started off talking about how positive the 90s was, but then you get to a certain point of the 90s and the focus shifts. The music becomes a little bit more violent, a little less hopeful, and the music isn't necessarily reflecting the progressiveness all the time. Enter the East Coast, West Coast beef. People don't focus on those particular times. People don't focus on the toxic masculinity, and I'm gonna say it, and I dare anybody to try to dispute me that toxic masculinity is a term. It is a thing, because anything in excess can be toxic. I could say more, but I'm gonna say less. But anyway, the whole thing is, these times that we hold near and dear to us aren't always as great as we think they are. We get so caught up in the fact that this is a part of our story, but we don't separate the fact that some of these parts of our story, they have different nuances to them. They can have good nuances to them. They can have bad nuances to them. And the thing is, they're still a part of the narrative, but you also have to look at it like, you can't be so hell-bent on this one part of your life that you cannot embrace the beauty in the other parts of your life, or the other places you lived, or the other people you've been friends with, or other family members that you've gotten along with a little bit more than maybe other family members. This song is so important because it's a matter about accepting beyond what you think is so great. Because if you allow nostalgia to hold you prisoner, you can't appreciate the now. That's why I said, you know what I'm saying? But the problem being frozen in nostalgia. Now's in low regard. The old is God. Don't know nostalgia. You don't value what's going on right now. You don't value your future because everything is about the past. The old is your God. The past is your God. The prior is your God. How do you move forward if you're constantly looking in the rearview mirror? And that's something to really consider. And that's really the point of this song. And that's a point that I had to come to as a man, as a person, and learn, look, I got to appreciate the now. I got to appreciate the present. I got to appreciate the future. Look back and appreciate, but don't look back and depreciate everything else that's going on right now or that could happen. That's really the biggest point of this song. And that's where I'm gonna leave it because I feel like I've been talking long enough. And I apologize if you've been rocking with this episode for as long as you have and feel like, man, this man just talked a hole in my head. And I'm sorry, but Oxon Hill Village, it just does that to me. That's all I can say right there. Now, I'm gonna give y'all a one-stop shop where you can get my debut EP, The Late Bloomer, which features songs like Leaving Alice. And the same place, you can also get batch gear like you see this hat right here. You can get it all in one place. BAMMLLC.net. Once again, that's BAMMLLC.net. You can go there, connect to your favorite site. If you're an Apple Music person, if you're an Amazon person, a Tidal person, if you're a Deezer person, I don't know so many people who got Deezer, but if you are on Deezer, I got to connect for you to get on Deezer from the website. And if you are a Bandcamp person, like most of the people who have bought the EP so far are, you can connect to Bandcamp, my Bandcamp, from my website. But if you want to go directly versus having to deal with a middleman, you can just go directly to ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Once again, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. On there, what's so special about the Bandcamp page is that you can get 4 bonus tracks that you can't get anywhere else, not even on my website, because Bandcamp just sets it up a little bit differently than most other places do. Whereas if you stream it, you just get the 6, but if you buy it, you get the 4 bonus tracks. So that gives you a little bit of incentive to actually buy the EP. But if you stream it, that's fine. If you like less, that's cool too. But if you like more, definitely buy it. Also, if you love the content that you are seeing today, if this was your first time watching The Maximum Sentence and you want to come back and watch more episodes again, or if you want to see more of my content, please make sure that you like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification so that whenever I go live, post a new video, premiere a new video, you'll be among the first to know. And of course, if you are not already following me on social media, please connect with me there. I am on Facebook and Twitter at AJ Throwback. And if you are an Instagram, TikTok person, I'm on those platforms at a.j.throwback. And if you want to follow the merch social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, it is batch.202. And on Twitter, it's batch_202. So next time on The Maximum Sentence, I'll be breaking down the last song on the EP, the standard form of the EP, which is I Want My Summer Back. I definitely am excited to break down that song with y'all next week. So until then, I appreciate everybody for tuning in to The Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. I've been your man, AJ Throwback, and I want y'all to have a great rest of your week. Hope that you enjoy your weekend, and I will see y'all next Wednesday for another great episode. Y'all be easy, enjoy yourselves, be safe out here. Peace.
What's the problem being frozen in nostalgia? Now's in low regard, the oldest God don't know nostalgia. Desperately I seek your missing pieces, but steadily appeasing this